Imagine being a slave and finding love in the eyes of a noble son. That's the story of a young girl, sent to House Quan as a servant at just 10 years old. She arrives with a man, and a curious maid asks who the little girl is. The man replies that he picked her up from a slave merchant that very morning. He explains no one wanted to buy her because she's a young orphan. Not trusting the cruel merchants to care for her, he had no choice but to take her away. While he speaks, a young boy listens from inside his room. The maid takes the girl and acknowledges the man's kindness, though she notes they have no use for such a small child in the household. Just then, the young master steps out, asking about the noise. The maid quickly bows and explains that Master Kwon brought the girl from the slave market. The young man, Kwon Yoon, is 15 years old and he's the heir to House Quan. The little girl bows and thanks the young master for saving her from the slavers. He steps closer and tells her to raise her head, then asks her name. She says she doesn't have one, she was born a slave. Gently, he tells her not to be afraid. He was just thinking of giving her a name. A name? You do that for me, sir? She asks, surprised. He laughs and tells her to think of it as a gift. Then he names her Seo-hye. Her cheeks flush red, her face lighting up with joy as she repeats the name in her mind. It's the first gift she's ever received in her life, and it means the world to her. 5 years later, Seo-hye has grown. She's wiping the floor in the house when the young master walks by. She silently counts herself lucky to serve someone like him. She's heard horror stories of slaves beaten to death by their masters, but the young master is different, gentle, kind, and soft-spoken. Since the day she arrived, he has never been anything but good to her. While he's out for a walk, she approaches from behind and politely apologizes for interrupting. He turns and reminds her that she's been with them for 5 years now. He asks how it's been for her. Then, with a quiet sigh, he says his uncle has left to teach other students, and he's been feeling the absence. In a softer voice, he adds that if she ever left too, he would be truly sad. Seo-hye looks at him with soft, sympathetic eyes, sensing his loneliness. She remembers that he lost his parents when he was around her age. As an orphan herself, she understands that kind of pain deeply. Maybe that's why she cares about him more than anyone else does. Wanting to comfort him, she gently tells him not to worry, she will never leave his side. She adds that, though it may sound bold coming from a servant, she takes her duty seriously, and he can always count on her. He steps a little closer, brushes his finger lightly against her lips, and tells her it's not bold at all, it's actually quite cute. In the next scene, Yoon greets his uncle warmly, though he admits he would have appreciated a heads up so they could prepare for his arrival. His uncle just laughs and says they should head inside. Later, while Seo-hye sweeps just outside Yoon's room, she overhears a conversation between him and his uncle, Master Quan. To her surprise, his uncle is urging him to marry. Shocked, Seo-hye drops the broom. Inside, Yoon tries to avoid the topic, saying the timing isn't right. But his uncle presses on, reminding him that as the future patriarch of House Quan, it's his duty to carry on the family line. Power always comes with a price. Just as Yoon is about to reply, he senses someone nearby. In an instant, he knows, it's Seo-hye. Seo-hye runs away from his room, her heart heavy with panic. The thought of the young master getting married spins in her head. What will become of her now? She rushes to find the maid and blurts out that she just overheard the young master is going to marry. What is it to you? The maid snaps. Seo-hye hesitates, then quietly says she was just wondering if that means she'll be his mistress. The maid gasps, eyes wide. I don't know what he's been saying to you, silly girl, but get a grip on reality, she says sharply. You're a glorified slave. You're nothing. Then, as if to crush her further, the maid points to a crumpled piece of paper on the floor. That's what you are, she sneers. A scrap, useless and discarded. Seo-hye stares at the paper, stunned, as tears fill her eyes. The maid leans closer and warns, mark my words. Know your place, or it'll be the end of you. Seo-hye turns and runs, crying. All she ever wanted was to stay by Master Yoon's side. Even if she can't be anything more, she still believes in his kind heart. As she sobs, memories flood her mind, how he gave her a name, how gentle he's always been, and even the moment he kissed her. It all comes crashing down. She falls to the ground, overwhelmed, tears soaking her hands as she curses herself. All she's ever wished for is to stay with him. But if that's no longer possible, she doesn't know what she's living for. Maybe this house was never her home after all. That night, Master Yoon sits alone in his room when a guard rushes in with startling news: Seo-hye is gone. Her room is empty. She's run away. While Seo-hye is still running, she doesn't realize that her desperate attempt to protect herself is only leading her straight into ruin. She's caught halfway and dragged back toward the house, crying and begging for mercy. The guard pulls her through the gates and straight to the main house. "What should we do with her now?" he asks coldly. Seo-hye, still struggling, pleads with him not to take her to the young master. Without a word, the guard slams her to the ground and walks away, leaving her alone in front of Master Yoon. Seo-hye quickly bows low, her body shaking, and starts apologizing over and over. But instead of accepting it, Yoon questions her. "What are you sorry for?" She lifts her head in shock, trembling, trying to read his expression. But before she can say a word, he slaps her hard across the face. His eyes darken with anger. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Now inside his room, he continues flogging her until she falls to the ground trembling. She pleads for mercy and swears not to ever run again, but her tears and pleas fall on deaf ears. With his face hardened, he asks if this is what he gets for trusting her. Then, he drops the cane and says that she's just like everyone else. After a very cruel laughter, he says that in the end, she too was going to abandon him. He leans closer and mentions that his impulse tells him to punish her with extreme prejudice, but he knows a much better way to educate an animal such as herself. Without hesitation, he pulls her dress down and starts undressing himself too. Before Seo-hye can understand what's going on, he's had his way with her. She continues begging for mercy, but things only get more intense to the extent that he promises to give her the lesson she'll never forget. After he's done, he tells her that what she's done to him tonight is unforgivable and she shall pay dearly for her insolence from this day on. From that moment on, she tries to escape every chance she gets, but she's always caught and dragged back to the house to face harsh punishments. She runs because he's no longer the man she once knew. The young master she remembers would never hurt her. This person now feels like a complete stranger. During another escape attempt, she's caught yet again and brought back. The other maids whisper among themselves, wondering if she'll ever stop trying, though they all know it's impossible to escape the House of Quan. When Master Yoon asks for a branch to punish her with, she instantly starts pleading, swearing she won't do it again. But he reminds her that this is her third attempt, and for that, he says, he must act to stop any future disobedience. Maybe mercy is not a bad option, he says, staring at the cane, and this gives her a little hope that she won't be punished today. To her surprise, he holds her chin up and acknowledges that she's in a terrible fear and also says that he's not going to punish her. Rather, he's just going to hurt her really, really bad. As if that's not enough shock, he instructs her to stand up and pull up her skirt, and she quickly obeys. He flogs her to the point that the cane breaks. Now he needs something bigger and thicker than the stick. However, Seo-hye has had enough. The pain is unbearable, so she quickly stands up and raises her dress, willingly offering her body instead of getting flogged any further. He glares at her blankly before asking what she expects him to do with that, after which, he orders her to step closer and spread her legs. After she obeys, he begins the violation again, but this time, it's more intense than ever. She even fears for a possible pregnancy, knowing fully well that if she has a child, the child would only be a slave too. Despite her fears, he only orders her to clean herself up and be ready for him tonight. Young Master Kwon Yoon is the sole heir to one of the most powerful houses in the nation, and his graceful presence has been admired since childhood. His great-grandfather once served the royal throne as vice-chancellor, and his grandfather was a respected scholar who even taught the Prince of Chosen. Yoon's father rose quickly through the ranks to become the youngest supreme chancellor in the cabinet. Thanks to their political strength, the House of Quan even convinced the royal family to accept Yoon's sister as a royal concubine, the only daughter ever granted that position. The influence of House Quan seems limitless. That is, until tragedy strikes and everything begins to fall apart. The decline starts with the untimely death of Yoon's parents, leaving him the head of the household at just 14. His uncle steps in to guide him through those early years, but even he is eventually forced out of the capital after suffering his own political downfall when Yoon comes of age. Sitting alone in his room, Yoon reflects. It was around that time he first met Seo-hye. Her gentle voice had assured him that everything would be all right, and for a moment, he believed it, but it didn't take long to see it was a lie. He swears never to fall for such comfort again and vows to punish Seo-hye so harshly that she'll never even think of escaping him. Then, he raises his voice and calls out for someone to bring Seo-hye to him at once. As an odd afterthought, he adds, "These puff cakes are just too sweet." The maid outside hesitates, puzzled. Why would he mention puff cakes while asking for Seo-hye? Still, she walks off to deliver the message. When she finds Seo-hye, she tells her that the young master wants to see her. But Seo-hye stays quiet. The maid frowns, unsure if Seo-hye is ignoring her or simply lost in thought. Frustrated, she steps closer and kicks her hard enough to knock her to the floor. With Seo-hye's attention finally caught, she repeats the message. Master Yoon has summoned her, and said something about puff cakes being too sweet. Later, Seo-hye arrives at his room and quietly asks if he called for her. He nods and calmly offers her a puff cake. She instantly remembers the first time he gave her puff cakes, how excited she was, how sweet they tasted, and how her body reacted afterward. Quietly, she tells him that ever since that day, her body somehow rejects them. Seeing her hesitation, he scoffs and says the cakes are too good for her anyway, he'll find someone else to enjoy them. That's when it hits her. If the others find out she refused such an expensive gift, they'll resent her even more. So she quickly changes her mind and says she'll have a taste. She picks up the plate and politely asks if she can take them to her room before heading out. As soon as she steps outside and exhales in relief, another maid smacks her, causing the puff cakes to fall. The maid glares at her and says, "I don't know what's going through your head lately, but there are thousands of people who would kill for that kind of chance." Without waiting for a response, she picks up the cake and walks away. Seo-hye stays on the ground, tears quietly falling. She wasn't trying to be ungrateful, she just can't eat those cakes anymore, no matter how much she tries. A while later, she returns to Yoon's room sobbing, and then he asks why she's crying and if her fellow servant gave her a hard time. Fidgeting, she confesses that she has something to tell him, then she opens up. She can't eat the puff cakes. Ever since that incident, her body rejects those cakes even before she swallows them. To her surprise, he replies that he's aware and he still vividly remembers her first time eating those cakes. Tears well up in her eyes as she inwardly questions why he did that if he remembers the incident. Then, he explains his reason for giving her something she can't handle. It's because he likes defiling her when she's most vulnerable. Having said that, he mentions that it's time for her to do her job, so she crawls toward him and he holds her in a tight embrace. Then, he whispers an advice. The house is a big empty shell and no one will be able to hear her crying no matter how desperate she is. Will Seo-hye be able to escape this sad fate? Let us know in the comments if you'd like us to continue this story. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.